Okay, good evening, folks. My name is George Maniotis. I am your moderator tonight, host. I am the director of the Center for Experiential Learning here at Muskegon Community College. Oftentimes people say, what is this Center for Experiential Learning? We've heard a lot about you. We notice you do a lot of activities in the community. Yes, we do. We are part of the academic curriculum here at Muskegon Community College. Our purpose is to provide students in the social sciences, business, and other areas with out-of-classroom experiences, whether it be lectures, trips, debates, forums, films, to provide them the real-world activity that makes the theory and the things that we talk about in the classroom come to life. We have done a lot of things since 2011. My co-director, Kurt Troutman, who is unfortunately not here with us tonight, he's on a study tour in Canada, but we kind of quipped that we've come a long way from driving vans with students to Gettysburg and Vicksburg to see Civil War battlefields, to flying to the beaches of Normandy to see where our troops landed during D-Day, to things like this, where we get to understand and find out what makes our democracy work. And I often point out to students that Plato, that famous Greek philosopher, had a rather dim view of democracy. In fact, he had a classification system between good forms of government and bad forms of government. And of course, Plato, being the type of person he was, he often thought that the best form of government should be a philosopher king. But if you couldn't have a philosopher king, he would settle for a democracy, which Athens was. But his whole concern about democracy was that you have many people that are uninformed, and they would become a mobocracy. So we're trying to keep things on the democracy side of the coin, to educate, to enlighten, so you, the voter, which make this system, and this system work well, a gleaming beacon. And I often think that Plato and all the sophists would have laughed because their theory would have had to been revised, because I think we do a fine job of keeping democracy going here. So this evening, let's go through a few things. We have our Democratic candidates contested primaries for state office. This is the third in the series. We started last Monday evening with the Republican candidates for the 34th Senate District and the 91st State Representative Districts. And last Wednesday night, we had the county commissioners in contested districts, both Republicans and Democrats. So this is the third in the forum. We're doing tonight the Democratic candidates for state office. Tonight, we have the candidates for the 34th District, Colleen Lamonte and Poppy Cias Hernandez. That's the last you'll do that tonight, folks. Okay? I know you love your candidates, but in order to keep this flowing, refrain from applauding. You can do it at the end. 91st District State Representatives Tanya Habala and Andy O'Reilly are here as well, joining us. By a coin flip earlier in the evening, we decided that the senatorial candidates will go first. They will have 45 minutes, and then we will flip around and do the state representative candidates. You will have opportunity to meet the candidates after the forum. They've set up tables in the back of the room. They're happy to entertain questions, etc. The questions have been drawn up by the staff here at MCC in coordination with our moderators, and we're prepared to ask them. We do ask that, however, you show decorum. This is not a presidential debate. We do not want you as the focus. We want our candidates as the focus. So show courtesies, please. No cat calling, no sign waving, no outbursts, please. Now, tonight, the 91st State Representative District will be part of our focus. This is what the district looks like. It goes all the way to the north, up to Montague, all the way to the south, to Norton Shores, out to the east to Casnovia. So it's a pretty extensive district. Doesn't take in much of the city of Muskegon, obviously. And then we have the senatorial district, the 34th, which encompasses 3 counties, 245,000 constituents, Oceana, Newaygo, and Muskegon counties. Our moderators tonight, Ms. Kathy Moore, who is a director of the Muskegon County Health Department and also the president of the Rotary Club, and Kathy also is on the MCC Board of Trustees. And then we have Andy Fink, retired adjunct professor in political science and an attorney, well known in local circles for his political activism. Both of them will be involved. Andy will do the senatorial campaign candidates, and then Kathy will do the state reps. Remember, our primary is August 7th. Doesn't matter how well you like your candidate, if you don't come and do your part, guess what? It's all for naught. So, Andy, take it away.
All right, we forgot to flip to see who goes first, and so, Colleen, call it.
Heads.
It is heads.
Okay.
Colleen will go first. But before you start, I have an overarching question. I don't know who named that. Probably Kurt. We can blame him because he's not here. Please share with our audience this evening what qualifies you to be a candidate for the office of state senator. Share with us any details regarding your background, education, employment, or world experiences which have prepared you for this quest. You have 3 minutes.
First of all, I want to thank MCC for hosting this event and for the opportunity to speak with all of you about some important issues that our state is looking to solve right now. I'm Colleen Lamonti, and as a former state representative, I have shown the passion, the integrity, and the ability to hit the ground running once I get to Lansing. When I served as your state representative, I sponsored and co-sponsored over 150 bills. And of those 150, there were 30 that got signed into law. I have worked across the aisle. I have worked to stand up to the people who were, looking to hurt the citizens of my area. And that included, at times, my own party. This is about making sure that I represent the people of this community. And the issues that we face today are so important. We have seen 8 years of Republican control in our legislature, and it has brought our state to the brink. We need to repair our school systems. We need to fix our roads and infrastructure. We need to get affordable insurance for everyone in our state, and that includes our auto insurance rates. Folks, I have this experience, and you know me. You know what I bring to the table on this. You know that these issues, the issues that you are concerned about, are the same ones that I went to Lansing and fought for you. The bills that I introduced ranged from everything from the education issues, which I have firsthand knowledge being a former high school science teacher, the issues that we've seen happen within our schools, the DeVos attempt to dismantle our public education system, which is the heart of so many of our communities. I have introduced legislation to protect our environment and to protect consumers against predatory lending. There are so many other bills that I have introduced, but I think that I have the proven record of knowing how to run a campaign and knowing how to serve you with the passion, honesty, and integrity that you deserve.
Thank you, Colleen. Poppy?
Hi everyone, my name is Poppy Cias Hernandez. I'm a Democrat running for the 34th District Senate seat, and it's really awesome to see so many familiar faces here tonight. So many people engaged in learning about the process and, going all in on this primary because it's a really important race. People that I've worked with on the Growing Goods Project, people that I've worked with at Good for Youth, people that were part of the Real Voices, Real Choices Youth Summit, the different initiatives that I've been involved with at the community level. Sitting here in this seat as a first-time candidate, when I look out and I see your faces, I feel incredibly grateful to have been able to work alongside of you and also grateful that you're here. I think that what my candidacy is about and the reason that I am running is because while I was very happy doing the work that I was doing in community, working in public education and in public health, working with families and youth, it felt really clear to me that I and the people that I was working alongside could continue working very hard every day, giving it our best, and we weren't really going to see sustainable change because sustainable change has to be motivated at the legislative level. And what I also noticed about that work was that the people that were working alongside of me weren't running for elected office. We were happy to continue doing the work. And that is a primary motivating force for me in terms of running for this office. I believe that more people like me that have been doing that grassroots work at the community level need to serve at the elected level because we understand what is going on, what the problems mean, how they're impacting the daily lives of everyday folks, and we're going to fight for the change that needs to happen. So I wanted to speak clear about where I stand on a few issues. We have only a couple of minutes, but I'm just going to share with you. My personal life, my professional life has been built upon the very creative and innovative collaboration of public services and private entities coming together for success. I grew up, I'm first generation college educated, and I have a master's degree. And my son is going to an Ivy League school, right? So I believe that we have to be really intentional and address these issues. We must address public education equals access to all young people. We must address healthcare, not health insurance, healthcare. And we must address the infrastructure issues that are dogging the state. Until we do that, all people can't do well equally.
Thank you, Poppy. Now, since Colleen went first last time for our questions, I will start with Poppy. And we have a series of envelopes here that are unmarked, and so I don't know what order the questions will go in. Poppy, this is addressed to you now and to you later, Colleen. Government pension reforms have been a topic for legislative action in Lansing for the past 8 years. It appears that some groups have been targeted quite heavily with the diminution of their pension programs, teachers, for example, while others have gone relatively unscathed, judges, district attorneys, state police. Please discuss how you will address the issue of pension shortfalls and how you will make these changes equitably.
So because I'm new to this experience, I'm learning a lot about how we talk about the issues. And we talk about this issue of a pension shortfall. And what I would say is that there isn't a pension shortfall. There is a decision about how we fund pensions that has been changed, and therefore money is not being paid into pensions in the way that it should be. And I would argue that there's a lack of integrity around that. A pension is a promise. And it's not an empty promise, it's a promise made based on people's time and energy. You know, teachers leave their families and go to work all day and take care of other people's children. And part of what they're doing is earning a pension. And the state has an obligation to fund those pensions adequately. And when we talk about a pension shortfall, that's messaging that is really trying to take away the blame for pulling money that doesn't belong to these legislators. It didn't belong to them. Today, I was at a candidate forum at lunchtime, and one of the candidates said they borrowed that money. Well, I don't know. I mean, I learned that if you borrow something without asking, it's not borrowing, okay? So what I would say is that there isn't a shortfall. There's a problem with our priorities. And in very simple terms, if we say we're going to do something, we should do it. We should be able to count on our government to do what they say they're going to do. And specifically relative to these public pensions, I mean, it's not a good look when corporations are having more integrity around their pensions than the government. That is not good for us. We have an ethical responsibility to pay these pensions as we promised to do that. So I would say that we have to stop giving huge corporate tax cuts that allow us to say things like a shortfall. We have to tax corporations appropriately, and so that we have the money to fund our pensions. That's, I mean, the timing of the giant tax cuts and the pension shortfalls is completely lined up. So it's disingenuous to say that there's a shortfall. So that is what I would propose, is that we do what we say we're gonna do. If we say we're gonna pay out pensions, then that's what we need to do. And we can think creatively about ways that people can plan for their retirement in the future, but we have to be where we are, honestly, and with integrity. So if we agree to pay pensions, that's what we have to do for everyone.
Thank you. Colleen, same question.
Thank you. As a teacher, as a former teacher, I saw this affect me personally as well as my colleagues. New teachers coming into our system are not afforded the same pension guarantee that we had for our senior educators. We have seen for 8 years in Lansing a shift in the priorities of where we are spending your money. And yes, it's your money, it's your tax dollars. But we have seen a shortfall in the revenue sharing that has been shared with our communities. We, of course, saw the $1 billion cut that they made to education funding back in 2011. As a result of having all of these cuts, our government entities, our schools have had to cut personnel. They have laid people off. People in our communities lost their jobs because Republicans in Lansing have a priority of giving tax cuts to people that don't need it, and corporations who are only taking it to Wall Street and giving it away to their investors. When we have fewer people paying into our pension systems, this does create a problem. But it's a problem that the Republicans created for themselves. They created this problem, and now they're saying, I'm sorry, what are we going to do here? There's this big problem, and we can't pay for it. This is wrong. We need Democrats in Lansing who care enough about funding our communities, who care enough about having good government, who care enough about funding education for our children, and who care enough about making our communities safe and strong with good schools for our kids. That's how we are going to fix this problem.
Thank you, Colleen. This next question goes to you. Did you want a rebuttal?
Nope.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll get your attention if I
Oh,
can.
you haven't answered this question?
The pension question, yes, I
You
asked.
did, I thought so. All right, the next question goes to Colleen. Education continues to be a top concern among many voters in your respective districts. Discuss how you hope to address the issues of funding for K-12 and community colleges, which see higher levels of support going to wealthier districts and fewer resources going to the more impoverished or rural districts.
And again, this is a matter of who we are as Michiganders, what we value, and where our priorities lie. We've seen the DeVos plan to dismantle public education, and dang it, over 8 years, they've done a pretty good job of doing it. You know, when you expand charter schools throughout the state with very little oversight or accountability, when you allow online learning and online for-profit companies to come in and they get the same per pupil funding as our brick and mortar schools, this is going to create a problem. Now, honestly, when I was in the state legislature, we looked at our school aid fund. And Prop A set up this school aid fund to make sure that we had the funding for our kids' education. But when they set up the 2-to-1 ratio of how increases were going to go out, the legislature found a loophole. And when they cut $1 billion out of education funding, it didn't get cut 2-to-1 for the rich districts and the poor districts. It got cut the same across the board. And taking money away from a district that's already at the low end of the per pupil scale counts a lot more than when you're taking it away from a district that's getting $11,000 or $12,000 a pupil. Prop A is an issue that we need to take a look at. Our school funding is upside down. We've got schools that are in affluent areas with a very good tax base that are still getting that extra money, $11,000 or $12,000 a pupil. And we've got schools in our most impoverished areas that are still only getting $7,500 per pupil. This isn't right. We need to make sure that all of our children have every resource possible to get them the education they deserve. And if that means that we have to spend more for some of our kids because they come to school with less, then that's what we have to do.
Thank you. Poppy, same question.
3 minutes?
Yes,
I just want to
3
make sure. Okay, so what I would say to this question about addressing funding issues for K-12 is we need to do more than take a look at how we're funding schools. We need to change it. We need to change it. So right now, schools I'm so appreciative that Colleen explained all of that because then I don't have to go into it, but thank you so much. But essentially, we're not funding school districts based on the needs of students, okay? So we're not able to respond to the needs of students. It's really that simple. So what I would push for, what I would fight for, is changing how we fund school districts. And the funding would be based on the needs of the population in that district versus the ability of the adults to generate tax revenue of the people in that district. The school aid fund is a statewide fund, and it should be used as a statewide fund, not seen as something that is parceled out based on your community's wealth. So I would push for that. I wouldn't, yes, we would have to talk about it. We would need to take a look at it, but believe that when I send my sons to Muskegon High School, I understand that the needs in those buildings are not being met. And I'm guessing that the needs of the young people at Grosse Pointe High School are being met in really different ways than what's happening at Muskegon High School. And so that is like the elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about. I'm telling you right now, I want to talk about it. I don't just want to talk about it, I want to create change around it. So that's the first thing that I would be pushing for, is we need to fund for that is needs-based and that is really looking at creating equitable outcomes for every single student in the state of Michigan. Imagine that, right? So that first. Secondly, I want to say that we spend a lot of time looking at measuring for young people in schools, which from where I'm sitting is really about punishing kids and teachers around outcomes. If we were to really address the funding needs and base those on the needs of the learners, then we would be able to create assessments that are more relevant and mean something to the people that are in those communities and the people in Lansing. So that's what I would propose, is that we fund based on needs and for equity.
Thank you. This next question starts with you, Poppy.
Okay.
One of the most significant expenses which state government grapples with is the cost of essential support programs for our most indigent population. What are your thoughts on assisting those who fall into the subsistence level programs? What should the state government's role be in helping the poor and the elderly?
I love questions about basic supports, and I love questions that include things like indigent populations or vulnerable or marginalized populations, because that's where I'm from, and that's where I work. So I'm happy to answer this question. I want to say first that when we think about support systems that need to come from our government, we need to think about two. I mean, I'm sure there's way more complex ways to talk about this, but what I would say first is there are two kinds. One kind is that there are people in our communities that are always going to need help from the government. There's no changing that for them. Either they are elderly or they have some persistent disability or other kind of challenge, but we are going to always have to be there for those people in our community. And then the second one is that there are people that need supports from the government that are temporary. The situation or the challenges that they're dealing with are not sustained. They're a temporary challenge, and our government needs to push in and help them get through that temporary challenge. So I believe legislators have to start using language that addresses and respects the different and distinct needs of those different populations. And I also believe that we have to think and legislate as a community. So when I think about the supports, I say I am from that. I grew up, my family received government assistance. And what we did with that government assistance was my mother ensured that we had a quality education. She ensured that we had a strong work ethic. She taught us that nothing is given, everything is earned. And my brothers and I graduated from high school and went on to earn our college degrees, and we're all, giving back, right? So I think that we have to create those pathways that move people through the temporary need into sustained ways of being part of their communities. And the ways that we do that are, we do that through quality education. We do that through innovation around technology, career tech education. Like, education isn't this really simple thing, it's this more complex thing. We do that through access to quality jobs. I think when we think about systems of support, we have to take care of each other.
Colleen?
So I also was able to utilize some of our systems that we have in our state. As many of you know my story, I went through a time with my family. My husband and I went through the recession like so many people in this community did. My husband lost his job, and he was the only breadwinner in our house at that time. I was staying home taking care of my newborn son and my daughter, who was 3. We lost our house because of it. We had to move in with my mom, and we took advantage of the My Child system to make sure that my children had insurance to take care of them for their shots and for all their sick needs. This is about our priorities and what we value. And Republicans see people who need assistance in a very different way than Democrats do, and than I do. I care enough about the people in our community that we need to make sure that we take care of one another. Back in, during Bill Clinton's time in office, he went and did the change that he did. And he took the model from federal funding going directly to people, and he put it down at the states. Since then, Michigan has taken some of the funding that they receive, and they are sending affluent students to private colleges and universities in our state. I want to take that money back. I want to get that money to the people who need it the most. And one of the biggest areas that I see that this needs to happen is in childcare cost for families who are trying to work. One of the biggest problems that we have in trying to get people back to work is the idea that they can't afford to put their children in daycare. Michigan is second worst only to Kentucky in the amount of support that we give to this area. We need to make sure that we are taking care of the people in our community. And again, it's about who you want in Lansing. And someone who cares enough about the people in our community, making sure that we are taking care of one another, or someone who is not going to do it.
Thank you, Colleen. Now this next question is directed at you. The state of Michigan recently implemented a new law which requires all third graders to read at grade level or suffer being retained. What is your position on this issue? How would you assure parents and the public that this is not another initiative which is merely designed to meddle with the education system and to assist the large testing corporations like ACT and SAT?
I was actually serving on the Education Committee in the State House when this bill was brought up. I know the bill's sponsor, Amanda Price. When she brought this bill before the committee, I was shocked and saddened because I know what this was going to do to so many of the kids in our state, being held back and having that stigma. I talked to Amanda about this. She actually revealed to me that one of her own sons had been held back and
The mic.
oh, thank you.
Move it closer.
That one of her own sons had been held back. And the stigma that he had for the rest of his educational career. And I asked her, Amanda, how can you do this to nearly a third of the people within, of the kids in our state? How can you do this to them? But she went on and she continued pushing this bill. We offered amendments, my colleagues and I, to make it better than what she had originally introduced. We made it so that at least the parents, the teachers, and the principals would also be involved in the decision of whether or not to hold those children back. But folks, let's face it, this bill is designed and aimed at the poor children in our state. Our state has had one of the fastest growing segments of children living in poverty. And when you have children living in poverty, they don't come to school with the same level of support, with the same level of at-home education that they need to get them a good start on their education. So more often than not, the kids that we're talking about holding back are the children living in poverty. This is a travesty, and this is one of the bills that as soon as I'm elected is going to get repealed.
Candidates, please use the microphone. We're not picking you up on TV. Respectfully, I need you to bring it closer to you.
And you're up.
I'm up. Okay.
Andy, speak in the mic.
Yes, sir.
So the question about the third grade reading level, if a child isn't reading by the time they get to third grade, it's too late. The work of getting a child reading or reading ready happens before they get to third grade. If we're retaining them in third grade, we're actually not really intervening at all. We're penalizing. That's what we're doing. And I appreciate the story about the legislator who sponsored the bill, even having her own personal experience, and still got on board for this bill, because I think that is something that happens with legislators, is they actually become disconnected from the really crucial issues that are real in their communities, and that's a great example. What I would put forth is that it's not just about stigma. We have the data to tell us about what happens when we retain kids. We know that if we retain kids, the likelihood that they're going to drop out of school, they're going to end up in the pipeline to prison, schools to prison pipeline is increased dramatically. We know that socially they're going to be impacted profoundly. So what we don't know is what the benefits are of doing that in a systemic way, of just retaining thousands of third graders because they haven't met this assessment, which, by the way, changes all the time, right? What the reading looks like changes all the time. So I was talking to someone about this recently, this very specific law, and the person said to me, it's a really good example of legislators behaving like school administrators. And I was like, that's exactly what it is, right? So I just want to say, I want to share this little window with you. When my oldest son was in first grade, it was getting towards the end of the school year and he wasn't reading yet. And I went to his teacher, Mrs. Cotton, who was amazing. And I said, Mrs. Cotton, Angelo's not reading. I'm a little bit nervous, with all you do here at school and everything we do at home. Why isn't he reading yet? And Mrs. Cotton said, Poppy, settle down. The light will come on and Angelo will read and everything will be fine. And I was able to trust Mrs. Cotton. You know why? She had the training of a teacher. She had the extensive experience of working in schools, and she knew my son. And I feel like when legislators come up with these hard, fast measures, they're not respecting families or kids.
Thank you, Poppy. I believe we're supposed to limit this to 45 minutes, George?
Yes, we are.
All right, then this is the last question. We start with you, Poppy. Despite increases in the gasoline tax and the vehicle registration fees, Michigan's infrastructure continues to deteriorate at an alarming rate. What initiatives or ideas would you propose to help address this concern in a feasible manner? Make sure you explain how you would fund these elements.
Okay. So, again, when we look at issues of infrastructure, it's really fascinating to me how we talk about that today, recently, in recent years, because it's almost as if we've never had to fund an infrastructure before, right? Like it's a new problem. Oh, wow, we have to take care of our roads and our bridges. And so for me, that's a disingenuous construct. We've always had to take care of our infrastructure. We've been better at it sometimes than others. And right now, I think it's pretty clear to everyone that we're not doing a very good job of it. A friend of mine in California saw a post and she said, roads, who cares about roads? And I said, in Michigan, everyone cares about roads, right? So this needs to be a priority. What I will tell you I will not support is special set-aside funds or more service fees or taxes that are put on only portions of the population. I will not support those things. What I will support is using our tax revenue responsibly. I will support large corporations paying their fair share. I won't name names, but there are certain corporations very unique and special to Michigan that manufacture a product that depends and uses heavily our infrastructure. And their product, as it drives down our roads, they have to be part of making sure that our infrastructure is safe and sustainable. They have to be part of that. They have a responsibility for doing that. I also think, what I also will get behind is, not just anybody can fix our roads. Just keeping it very simple. The quality of the work that occurs on our roads is not something that should be bid to the lowest bidder. It should be done by union workers who know what they're doing, and they've negotiated a fair and living wage, and they have a pension and benefits, imagine that, and they're responsible for taking care of our infrastructure. So that is the other thing I would push for. Lastly, I would push for more innovative technology that does save us money, but also creates infrastructure that is sustainable and that meets our needs as a state.
Thank you, Poppy. Thank you, Poppy. Colleen?
So we have seen over the last 8 years, as Poppy mentioned, just an irresponsible way of utilizing our state's general fund and how they basically keep up the maintenance on Michigan. This is our roads and bridges, but it's also things like our water and sewer treatment plants. It's about the pipelines, Flint, pipelines that need to come out of the ground. Okay, those lead pipelines have been there for a long time, and our communities knew that they were there. They need to come out of the ground. But what we need to do is we need to have a sustainable source of infrastructure funding. And it can't be dependent on who happens to be in the legislature and how they're going to parcel out one part of the fund for something that it doesn't belong to. Part of the problem that we've got in Michigan is that we have some of the highest truck weight limits. These weight limits allow trucking companies to damage our roads over and over and over again. And we do not hold them accountable. More than 70% of the roads in Michigan are deemed that they have to be replaced. It's not a point of just fixing them. We need to actually replace them. And every year, that number gets greater. We're going to get to the point where we're going to have to rip up every single road in our state just to make it so that we can drive on them. We have to fix this problem. Right now, we've got a registration system that picks winners and losers for cars and trucks and other vehicles that drive on our roads. We see a lot of dealer plates. I don't know if you ever noticed the plates on the back of the cars, and there's the little D in the middle of the numbers. That D stands for a dealer plate. And they only pay a small fraction of what the rest of us are paying for our vehicles. We need to make sure that we have everyone paying into the system, and that includes the trucking and the corporations that are profiting from these goods that are being hauled across our roads.
Thank you, Colleen. Now, each candidate has 2 minutes to summarize their position and why people should vote for her. We'll start with you, Colleen.
Again, I want to thank MCC for the opportunity to be here. You know, most of you know me. You voted for me in past elections, and as a former state representative, you know that I have the passion and the integrity and the ability to go to Lansing and get the job done. You know my values, my hard work and dedication to fight for our children's education and for teachers, to protect our environment, our Great Lakes, and the dunes along the shorelines, that I fight for unions and workers' rights to organize and have a living wage, for a woman's right to choose, for better roads and infrastructure and affordable health care for everyone, for civil rights for all people, and against the injustice of mass incarceration and for-profit prisons. I fight for all the other values that we as good Democrats and progressives care about. You know me, and this isn't just campaign rhetoric or some bunch of talking points. This is about who I am and how I care about this community. I will go to Lansing, and I have the ability to work with the colleagues that I have there to get the legislation written and to get the job done. Thank you so much, and I ask for you to believe in me again and for your vote on August 7th.
Thank you, Colleen. Poppy, 2 minutes.
I thought I said 5. So my name is Poppy Cias Hernandez, and I am loving this primary experience. I am loving hearing other candidates champion the issues that are really important to me and have always been really important to me throughout my life. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to offer myself up to serve in this way. The nice thing about the primary is that, you know, we mostly agree on the issues, right? We're all Democrats, and we want to see good things happening. I think what this primary is offering us is the opportunity to think about what we want the change to look like. Do we want the change to look like it's their fault that we're not getting these things done? Or do we want the change to look like, hey, I'm moving these things forward, this is what I told you I was gonna do, this is how I'm doing it, and this is how I'm delivering it. The most appreciation I have about this primary process is that I'm not talking about the Republicans. I'm talking about the Democrats. I'm talking about all of you sitting in this audience today, yourself making a commitment to get more engaged in this process in the same way that I have made that commitment, right? It's a whole different level of engagement for me this year. And I'm asking you all to do more too. So here's what we are gonna do. Together, we're gonna take back the Senate and the House. Together, we're gonna drive the change that we know needs to happen for our communities. Together, we're gonna make it better for all of the families and people that we serve. We're gonna do that together.
Thank you, Poppy. Before we conclude, I just want to remind you all that it doesn't do any good to show up here if you don't vote in the primary on August 7th. And I want to thank MCC for inviting me to participate in this. I've enjoyed it thoroughly.
Let's give a round of applause to the candidates and to our moderator, Mr. Fink. I think it really is a testimony to the energy of all of you that came here tonight for this first part of the forum. So let's hear it again.